Drum Talk. Today we're going to talk about ride cymbals. Now, I'm very much into ride cymbals, and I've been looking for the perfect ride cymbal for a long time, and to be honest with you, I do not believe I've ever found the perfect ride cymbal. But I have found some ride cymbals that I consider to be great ride cymbals, so I'm going to share my collection with you. Now let's talk about my starting point. My starting point was the 1970s, and in the 1970s, a classic ride sound would have had a nice ping to it, a nice bell. It wouldn't have been too heavy, but it wouldn't have been too thin either. As time would go on, we would progress back to wanting thinner cymbals. Matter of fact, if we were to get thin ride cymbals back in the 70s, we probably wouldn't have liked them. But this is a circa 1979 ride cymbal. This is called a ZILDJIAN deep ride, a 20-inch deep ride cymbal. Now, the 20-inch deep ride was considered one of the better ZILDJIAN rides. The other one that was very popular back in the 70s was the ping ride. But Steve Gadd played a deep ride, a 20-inch deep ride, among others. Other artists that were ZILDJIAN artists that played deep rides was also Peter Erskine played a deep ride. He played a 22. Now, I was always looking for that Steve Gadd ride. As a matter of fact, a couple years ago, a friend of mine, my friend Dave Jones, who I've talked about on other videos, sent me a cymbal that was his son's cymbal. And I kept it. His son, his name is Zach. And if you look up Zach Jones, you'll find out he's a pretty famous drummer today too, having played with some great artists. This was Zach's cymbal. This is a 20-inch pre-aged dry light ride. And this cymbal has got a nice crack in it. Zach did a nice job on it. He was using it as a ride crash, as is typical in rock music about 7-8 years ago and is today. The reason why I kept it was reminiscent of a ride cymbal that Steve Gadd was using back in the 70s. It was a lighter K, of course it was an Istanbul K, and this K that Gadd was using, he used on the Paul Simon tour with, I think there's a famous video of Paul Simon in Philadelphia, and that 1980s tour, and he was playing this really cracked, beat up ZILDJIAN, and this is kind of reminding me of it. Now, this is what Gadd's sound sounded like. It was very similar, reminiscent of it. Very dry, dark and dry sound. And that was a cymbal sound I was trying to attain. And until I could get rid of my ride cymbal that I had for many years when I first started playing, which was a 21-inch rock ride, or they used to call them a Rock 21 ZILDJIAN. It was heavier than the deep ride I had. I was basically looking for that sound. Now, as the 80s went on, these were the kind of cymbals that started to come out. This is a PAISTE 2002, and this is a power ride. And this is where ride cymbals were going, heavier and heavier ride cymbals. Not really pretty to crash. Big bell though. Now, the 2002 Power Ride, heavy, thick, chunky. Metal guys love these kind of cymbals. Even today, most of your heavy metal or dark, I don't know what they're calling it today. There's so many different names for music, but when I think of heavy metal, when I think of Metallica, he's using a ZILDJIAN version of this with a big bell and really going through it. A very heavy ride sound. Never was what I was looking for. I was looking for more of that dry ride sound. This is a PAISTE 20-inch Dark Energy Mark I prototype. I bought this at Forks Drum Closet in 2006. Didn't realize till I did a video a few months ago, a drum cover of the song Long Train Running by the Doobie Brothers, and I was using this cymbal in the video, that how much it sounds like the Gad cymbal I'd always been looking for. Matter of fact, if you want to hear Gad's cymbal setup today, there's some videos of him playing with Chick Corea this year in 2016, I guess it was last year. And he taped up his ZILDJIAN cymbals to get a sound that sounds very similar to this sound. So the dark sound, the drier sound, that was kind of what I was always going for. So what I ended up evolving to back in the 80s was the sound of Sabian. And the first Sabian I bought, ride cymbal, was a 19-inch medium heavy ride cymbal. And it's an HH. So it's a Sabian HH medium heavy. And again, what I was looking for was something similar to the Gad cymbal. Now, I will tell you, I've removed the tape. I'll actually play it with some moon gel on it to give you the tape effect, but this is what it sounds like without tape. When you put some tape on the bottom of it, and I'll put it on the top so you can get the effect, this gives you more of the way it was sounding. Now, I use this cymbal from the late 1987, I would say right up and through the early 2000s when I did my wife's album. I was still using this cymbal a lot. It was actually one of my favorite ride cymbals because, to be honest, I couldn't afford a lot of ride cymbals. I had a couple, but this was like one of the main ones. And I used this for a long time. In 2012, I found its brother, and this is a early 80s Sabian medium ride, and this is a Sabian HH early 80s medium ride, and I found this in a drum shop in Minnesota called Ellis Drum Shop. And this was where I was evolving with cymbals, slightly thinner, but still that dark thing. So. Now, I will tell you something changed and happened dramatically after 2012 when I picked up this cymbal. All my kids grew up, gave me a little extra money to buy some things, and that's when I started working on looking for that perfect jazz ride cymbal. Now, a friend of mine, right around the same time, named Alan Levine, who's been featured in my other videos before, right around 2011 gave me this Mel Lewis Istanbul ride. And it's a 21-inch, it's got some rivets in it. Rivets add sustain to the cymbal. And it was really dark and really pretty, and I really dug it. It was kind of the way I was going with things. Also, you could crash the cymbal a lot. So the Mel Lewis ride became a ride I started taking out, and I was playing a lot of worship gigs in churches. And over the last 10 years, the worship music has become more darker and heavier with the rock thing, and most of the drummers are playing very big, large, dark ride cymbals and using them as crashes. So I started using this in church with the Sabians, and I started looking for bigger cymbals to have in church. I was playing in a big church auditorium, so it kind of fit. Which led me in 2014 to buying the KEROPE. And the ZILDJIAN KEROPE is like stepping over top of your A's and your K's ZILDJIANs from all those years and basically running into a 60s or 50s Istanbul type K sound. It's a very light ride cymbal. This one actually is 2360 grams, which is actually quite light for a 22-inch ride cymbal. And I went in Maxwell's drum shop looking for a Sabian artisan ride because I had spent a lot of money on Sabians and I've been playing Sabians for a long time. And I found this. And I went through about 40 ride cymbals that day in the room. And I kept coming back to this KEROPE. Every Sabian artisan I put up against it, I'd take it down, put another one up. And I went through a pile of probably about 40 cymbals. And this was one of 2 KEROPEs that they had left. And I picked this one up. Now, let me say something about cymbals. The stick you use to play them is going to have a huge effect on a cymbal, especially a cymbal that's got a thin, it's a thinner ride cymbal. These are the Steve Gadd signature sticks, okay? And it's got a nice little beady ball. But watch what happens when you take a different style stick. Let's take a acorn shaped stick. So this is a standard Los Angeles 5A with an acorn. Totally different thing. Let me try a different stick. My friend Alan Levine gave me a whole bunch of jazz sticks. He's a jazz player. Look at this. It's got a really, it's actually almost a sanded down acorn tip. Totally different vibe there, right? And I got one more. Let's see if I can find one more of my sticks. This is a very light, thin, small ball stick. I'm not even sure what kind of stick this is. Anyhow, really dug the KEROPE, and I picked this cymbal up in the process. Now, one of the nice things about the KEROPEs is they are crash rides, so I picked up a 19-inch to be a crash cymbal, and by the way, it is a great crash cymbal. Very nice crash cymbal, but it's also a really nice small ride cymbal. Okay, so found these KEROPEs. I should have probably stopped right there, but also when I was in Maxwell's drum shop a year before that, I found a PAISTE, and the PAISTE that I found was a 505 crash. It's in my PAISTE video. Well, to find a match of a ride cymbal for that, believe it or not, the other PAISTE that I had, I've had that for about 10 years now, the Mark I PAISTE. That was the prototype. It didn't really fit the 505 crash. So I went and found a giant beat. And this is the first giant beat I bought. Again, I was playing in churches, big cymbals. This is a 24-inch giant beat ride. Now, this is monstrous in size, but not really in... The bell is pretty monstrous, but the cymbal... Anyhow, John Bonham played a 24-inch giant beat ride. That was what he played on Led Zeppelin 1 and Led Zeppelin 2. I think the giant beats around Bonham's time was probably a little bit thicker, just a hair. But these are beautiful ride cymbals. Anyhow, from the 24-inch giant beat, I progressed to bought a 20-inch giant beat to be, it's a multi, just like that, 24 is a multi too. And I bought this to be a crash, but I found out this is a great ride too. So here's as a crash. So, giant beats became a favorite of mine, and the only problem was the 20 is a little small sometimes, and the 24 is a little big sometimes. So, the newest to my collection in the last 6 months is the PAISTE 2002 Big Beat. Now, what a difference to come from Sabian HHs to ZILDJIAN KEROPEs to finding my way into PAISTE 2002s. But the reason why I think I've been really digging these cymbals is because I've been playing in a band that plays 60s and 70s rock music, pop music. And they really cut through, and they're kind of like the sound that was really coming from the 60s. They're thinner cymbals, because most of the 60s ZILDJIANs are really thin cymbals. Well, the 60s PAISTEs, the Formula 602s and the early 2002s were thinner cymbals, the giant beats. So these are kind of harkening back to that 60s sound, and they just have a nice frequency range that really sounds nice in the microphones. Now, this whole video was cut with the mic on the camera, so you're not getting any of my mics that you see on the drum kit. But let you hear this cymbal. It's also a nice crash. Now, 2 more cymbals I want to bring in. And I think most drummers that play any kind of jazz music or want to play in light music or maybe like blues, I actually bought the first cymbal because I was playing blues back in New Jersey before I moved here to Florida. And the band I used to play with was a band called String Bean and the Stalkers. And believe it or not, I bought this cymbal specifically to play with them and never got to play with them, because we had just moved down. It was the year I moved down. This is an THIGPEN 18-inch flat ride. My first exposure to a flat ride was in college. A drummer named Steve Dunn had one. He played the heck out of that cymbal too, by the way. He was a great jazz player. I really enjoyed his playing. And he was really into the Roy Haynes jazz. Now, I've been playing a lot of my little jazz licks, but I don't really play jazz, to be honest. I'm more of a rock player. But I do dabble there. So this is a little bit of that flat ride sound. I put 3 rivets in it to give it that sizzle. Well, after I started getting into all the PAISTEs, my friend Alan Levine again came through. He had a cymbal he hadn't been using a lot, and we found a nice little trade, and he let me have his 18-inch PAISTE traditional flat ride. And it's just got a glassy tone to it. Really nice sound. Anyhow, that's my ride cymbal journey. As you can see, I've gone the gamut of ride cymbals. There's not one ride cymbal in here I would give away. Well, actually, that's not true. You never know. If you make me the right trade, I might trade you. But other than that, to be honest with you, most of these cymbals I want are keepers for me. It'd be hard for me to give any of them away. But as you can see, I love ride cymbals, and I love the sound of ride cymbals, and I like having different options. So I hope you enjoy this video, and until next time, Thanks for watching Drum Talk.